Hello there, welcome out to the workshop today, and we have a piano stool. We don't normally have a piano stool. This one is from my kids' school and it's in need of a bit of TLC. So the piano stool obviously has 4 legs and then a padded seat, but it also has this lift mechanism which is based upon this long piece of worm gear with these countercut threads, and rotating that with these big handles on the end in these slots, note, it drives this pair of arms in and out along the threads. These arms connect from the threaded bar which holds the seat up to this this lower bracket on the frame, which goes all the way around here nicely, supporting these edge legs. So there's a good transfer of weight down here. The weak point is down here. The bar supports the weight of the seat, but it's these little ornamental screws that are missing that are supposed to stop it from rocking. It doesn't help that the top part of this bracket mechanism fixes through this plastic padding, which means the screws are going to have a more difficult job holding all that assembly still. It's going to need a drop of glue in the screw hole, I think, to help reinforce that. In addition, what has happened with the various students rocking this and carrying it about by the arms is that these side pieces on this frame have just come loose. So we need to take this apart, we need to replace those screws, get some glue in those joints to reinforce it, and that's probably it. All the screws are just working themselves out. Some are already missing. That, interesting. We'll look at that in a second. Right, so this is the top seat section, which is in pretty good nick. Just a few running repairs and I think it will be fine. The only problem here really, the only problem here is this end where it's been, where the mechanism has been loose and it's been swinging. There's a lot of movement on this corner joint. Yeah, I have to get a look in the stock and see if I've got a bracket that will hold that. I do have some brackets in stock. Because I don't want to mess with the padding in these corners, I'm going to need to just get that in there and screw it in with some appropriate screws, and that's going to give that joint the reinforcement that it needs. This sort of job is so much quicker when I can just get a power tool in here. But because the frame is quite shallow and there's this nice base on here, if I put a power tool in here it's only going to end up getting caught and marring the fabric. So I'm just going to have to be patient and work with the hand tools. When I'm using the pin vise here, it's a bit like tapping. You need to make sure that you're backing off, especially on these blind holes, to make sure you can get the swarf out of the way. This has been repaired before. These brackets aren't original, I don't think. I think they've been probably relocated. But they're doing a great job, so whoever did that to repair actually did a good job there. Which means somebody has repaired this before. I wonder who that was, and I wonder why they didn't repair it again. Maybe they got sick of repairing it for these kids. Last screw, I want to move my arm out of the way so you can see what I've been doing. Yeah. Oh, done on that job. The mechanism is part of the structure here. If we look in these corners, there's this corner angle bolted to the leg on the upright, and that continues across the side brace with 4 screws to this corner, whereas again the angle bolted to the leg and then these 3 screws here. So if I remove these 3 screws, these 3 screws, these 4 screws along the bottom here and the bolts, then this whole end of the mechanism will come off, and the same that end. And I think that's where I'm going to start, completely dismantling this frame so I can look at how the corner joints are supposed to be together. Because right now, I don't know what's supposed to be stopping this bit of wood from doing that. Whether it's just these 4 screws under here, or whether there is some doweling down that joint there that needs to be improved. So yes, these end panels, and I suspect the side panels, are put together without dowels, which is why they get so rickety. I'm going to think about that in case I can think of a good reason why they wouldn't be, but off the top of my head I can't. It just seems like a recipe for ricketiness. Four nuts, 4 penny washers, 4 spring washers. That was 14 mil, by the way, when you're looking for that next time. Right then, now these end pieces. So, filling the screw holes, but also doweling. I wonder what wood this is. Feels quite light. The hard part of doweling this would be drilling these beautifully lacquered faces without making a mess, cracking off too much of the black. That wouldn't be a very welcome change. And this mechanism is the most substantial part of this. It's a good looking thing and it's in good nick. We'll give it a grease before we reassemble, but that is in good working order. Time for a coffee. So check this out. These are, I was just comparing the screws that I took off originally from the top side of the chair to the ones I took off, the 12 I took off around the bottom side of the mechanism, on the bottom part of the frame. They are the same. They are steel and they're powder coated black. You can see, because this one's got some damage here. In fact, several of them are damaged. You can see that the heads are bent. So I think if I can get some measurements, I might try and get some stronger ones of these. I've got new fixings on order, so there'll be a bit of a delay, especially at Christmas, to get those through, but they should be here within a week. I'll be putting the new fixings into these existing screw holes, because that's determined by the positions of the holes on the metal brackets. So I want to fill these and then pilot them before we end up putting those screws back in, just so there's more material for it to grip onto. And the trick for that, I think, is to have poorly children, because what we have here is a Calpol syringe with some wood filler in. There we go. Let that dry and we'll be in business. Let's talk about a couple of things. Firstly, let's talk about the problems with the design for this. It's not designed for the ravages of student users. It's designed to be carried about quite carefully, and I would say this has probably not been carried about all that carefully. The basic design is there's a metal C shape at each end onto which the legs bolt. When you torque one of these legs in and out, the C tries to rock, and the resistance for that against these long legs are just 3 little screws each end. I mean, 3 is better than 2 or 1, but it's still just 3 little screws trying to keep the end-to-end rock of this reduced. In order to improve that, I'm going to dowel these joints on the long sides and the short sides. What would be lovely is if I could just set a constant depth offset inwards and downwards for these bars, and that's probably how it was manufactured. Unfortunately, because of the wear over time, the movement in these C-shaped frames means that all of these dimensions are slightly different. So if I try and drill and dowel it all with a standard offset, the frame will go back together crooked and it will probably rock, which is not what we want. So I'm having to go round. I've numbered every joint and I'm taping every joint now to see where I need to put the dowel holes so that it all lines up in this configuration. Okay, so the main task for today is to drill some holes for dowels in the end of these pieces. The legs are going to be fairly easy to drill, so I will drill those second. They are thin enough that they'll be able to clamp into the drill press and allow me to execute those very precisely. So what I will do the harder ones first, and then if there's any inaccuracies in my placement, I can correct that on the easier ones. I have made a doweling jig for 8mm dowels. I just put a hardwood block in the drill press, this is some sapele, and drilled that with the spacing that I want, and that will allow me to clamp things together and drill into the end grain of this in a controlled way. What is the address? Making holes in things is something we've been doing as a species for hundreds of thousands of years. I don't know why it's quite so difficult, really. Soft. Tough. Soft. Okay. Down. Drum. Out. No. Listen. Right. And what I can do. And so. Anti-pressure. Okay. I'm free. Okay. Down. Okay. And 4. There. Down. There. Number 1 cut. There we go. All the holes are drilled. We need to mark up the corresponding legs with corresponding dowel holes. Hello, welcome back to the workshop. Apologies for the noise of the heater and me sniffing. It's one of the coldest days of the year out here in the workshop. We're at 11 degrees right now. We need to mark up the dowel holes on these final 2 joints, number 1 and number 2, and then drill those and we can go for a dry fit. 2, I've got the markers in the end. Make sure it's resting on both markers. Give it a tap. Then we can use the centre punch. Lovely. Time for a dry fit assembly. I think this is going to need a slightly different approach. There was always going to be an order of operations question here. I think we have just kind of answered it. Okay, everything apart from joint number 1 is done. So joint number 1 is done last. Ah, well there we go. Well, we are back together. There are no screws in that, but it is already a functional seat. So the next step will be to pilot these screw holes, and then to dismantle it again, and then to do a wet assembly with the wood glue in. Okay, we need to pilot some holes for the screws. If you remember, there's 3 in each of these side pieces and 4 along the ends. I've also got these slightly beefier steel screws that are similar but slightly longer and slightly stronger. Okay, so now all the holes are marked / piloted. Got to take the whole thing apart and then we can do a wet assembly. All the dowel holes are drilled, all the dowels fit, all the screw holes are drilled, they all fit. It's all ready to go together. I just need to glue it up and assemble it. I can't see any other way I can be more ready, so I guess we just start gluing some dowels in. Okay, that's one end of every dowel in. Now we need to start assembling. Finishing with joint number 1, before that joint number 7. And Joint number 4. Penny washer, spring washer. Oh, so the cold killed my camera battery in the middle of that reassembly, and I wasn't in the mood to stop and mess about, so I carried on and finished the reassembly of the sides of this frame, gluing, doweling and fiddling, just to get it upright and stable. And it's now time to put some screws in. And then once the screws are in, should my camera die again, I'm just going to move it inside so it can dry in the warm. But it's gone together pretty well. There's no appreciable rock, which is good. I'll get some screws in to hold it in place, and then we should be in business. Great. Anyone would think this had moved. If every screw hole feels like it's moved, it's probably moved. Oh, I need to take a break in a second because I'm getting a bit cack-handed. That was a good job though. Yeah, one screw to go. And of course, done. Last screw in. Tidy up tools. Okay, so this is all back together now. The joints are doweled and glued. All of the screws have been piloted and replaced on the bottom frame. I'm going to take this in the warm now to give the glue a chance to go off a bit quicker. And I'm going to go around all of these joints and make sure there's no glue leaking out, and just generally give it a clean and a tidy. Alright, we are hopefully now into final assembly. Just got to reconnect the seat pad to the lift mechanism to make it back into a seat again. I've just been levelling this to make sure it's even height end to end and front to back. And now we just need some screw holes. Okay, one done. Try and get this one at the other end to go. Okay, 2 in that end means I can and should ease this block out that was supporting the weight of that end. It's just fine. Right, other end, switch around. How are we looking over here? existing screw hole in line with this one. Last screw. Okay. Okay, there was a minor adjustment required there, but now we are all done. It isn't rocking, which is good. I just had something under one of the feet. The mechanism's working nice and freely again. There's no rock side to side or back and front. It's a little bit of a creak from some of these joints still because they're quite new, but I think we're good to go. We can return this to the school and they can have many more years of piano playing from it. Thanks for watching and stay safe.